Revealed 10 spine-chilling and sinister Appalachian cemeteries with terrifying, cursed secrets. Jenna had heard the whispers in Oak Hollow about the cemetery. They said it was haunted, cursed even, abandoned and shrouded in mist. It filled the small Appalachian town with dread, a specter hidden away from the prying eyes of its residents. But as Jenna and her son Kyle took the back roads that fateful night, they were unprepared for the truth lurking amongst the tombstones. Ignoring her instincts, Jenna pushed open the rusted gate, the iron screeching like a creature awakened from slumber. Just a quick look, she told herself. Little did she know they were about to awaken secrets best left alone. As the cold air wrapped around them like a vice, they stepped deeper into the cemetery, each step crunching on gravel that echoed in the silence. The moss-covered stones stood as ancient sentinels, their inscriptions worn nearly blank, save for a few that glowed eerily in the dim light, like secrets begging to be revealed. "This place feels wrong," Kyle murmured, his voice barely a whisper. His eyes darted nervously. Shadows played tricks on Jenna, lurking just beyond her peripheral vision. Each gust of wind carried with it a shiver, laced with an unnameable dread. Days turned into weeks after their disturbing visit, but the effects consumed them. The friendly smiles of the townsfolk twisted into cold, calculating gazes. Kathy at the grocery store no longer waved. She avoided eye contact like a sinner in church. Jenna felt it in her bones, a weight that grew heavier with every cold shoulder. When she looked over her shoulder at night, fear snaked up her spine, watching dark forms gathering in the shadows of their yard. "Mom, look," Kyle said one night, flipping excitedly through his sketchbook illuminated by the orange glow of the table lamp. Terrible figures sprawled across the pages, twisted and grotesque, echoing those damned gravestones. Instead of delight, dread surged through Jenna. They aren't just drawings, are they?" she whispered, a chill coursing through her. Kyle's brow furrowed, his hands trembling with the pencil that seemed to have a life of its own. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue." The darkness deepened, intertwining with the fabric of their everyday lives. Each glance at the neighbor's yard turned into a battle against paranoia. They had awakened something. Jenna could feel it tightening its grip. Night after night, she would hear whispers curling around the walls, insidious lies, reliving old grievances. A historian croaked warnings at her during a chance encounter. The cemetery had ties to her ancestors. Curses flowed in the blood running through Oak Hollow's veins. It all came to a head one stormy night. Wind howled like it carried voices from the dead. A shadow darted across the yard. Kyle gasped, eyes widened in terror. "Mom, it's watching us," he breathed, his voice cracking under the weight of unspeakable horror. In that moment, Jenna felt the chilling truth coil around her, the past clawing its way back to reclaim what was buried. She had a choice to make, align with the townspeople who might harbor secrets, or face the darkness alone, risking everything for her son. The air cracked with tension as old grudges and hidden curses stirred to life. Would they survive the unearthly storm brewing on the horizon? Time was running short. Jenna's heart pounded in rhythm with the howling wind. Shadows danced dangerously close, and the feeling of being watched sharpened into a blade that cut through her thoughts. "We need to leave, Kyle. Now," she urged, her voice barely above a whisper, trembling with urgency. Kyle nodded, his eyes wide and brimming with unshed tears, but his feet seemed glued to the floor. A flicker of movement caught Jenna's eye, a figure standing beneath the gnarled oak tree at the edge of the property. Backlit by a flash of lightning, she could make out a pale face and hollow eyes, silently observing them. "Get inside," she screamed, her voice cracking as she grabbed Kyle's hand and pulled him toward the door. The wind howled like a banshee, urging them to run, to flee. But fear and curiosity both held Kyle in place, as if the figure had cast a spell of paralyzing dread. "Mom, what if it's one of them?" he stammered, glancing back as he caught a fleeting glimpse of the ghostly figure. It felt like time warped around them, stretching unbearably thin as they faced an unseen menace. Jenna felt the weight of the town's secrets swirling around them, a storm growing in intensity. Whatever it is, it can't hurt us inside, she insisted. Kyle finally relented, and they barreled into the house, shutting the door with a heavy thud that reverberated through the silence. But the moment of safety was fleeting. Outside, whispers flitted through the cracks, muffled conversations slipping under the door like a tide creeping in. Jenna pressed her ear against the door, and the words tumbled forth, a haunting echo of familiar voices. You shouldn't have gone there, Jenna. It will know. You must pay for what you've awakened. Each whisper felt like ice water coursing through her veins, their scorn cutting deeply. Mom, I don't want to hear them, Kyle shouted, his face pale and filled with terror. Panic surged through Jenna. She pulled him away from the door, desperate for a way to maintain control. We'll lock the windows, just in case, she said, trying to sound confident. Uncertainty gnawed at her insides, but the shadows outside grew restless, shifting like living beings. They secured the windows, the lights flickered, casting ominous shadows that danced across the walls. Jenna could feel the presence of something ancient and powerful pressing against the edges of their reality. Mom, I can't draw anymore, Kyle whispered, clutching his sketchbook tightly. It's showing me things. What do you mean? Jenna asked, her stomach sinking. The room felt oppressive, alive with a malevolent energy that pulsed like a heartbeat. They're inside my head, they're watching me. Kyle breathed, his young face shadowed by fear. They want me to join them. The hair on the back of Jenna's neck prickled with a horror that threatened to consume her. She felt as if the walls themselves were closing in, hungry for something to devour. We'll find a way out of this. Together, she said, forcing a tremor of hope into her voice. Just then, a loud bang erupted from the front windows, shaking the entire house. Jenna spun toward the sound, adrenaline coursing through her. The whispers turned into a chorus of mocking laughter, chilling her to the bone. She grasped Kyle's hand as if it were a lifeline, feeling the reality of their situation deepen. They're coming for us, Mom, Kyle said, tears streaming down his cheeks. Jenna wanted to scream, to fight, to push against the oncoming tide, but every cell in her body warned her that something sinister lay just beyond their sanctuary. Then we'll face them, she declared, summoning every ounce of courage she had left. But deep down, she could feel the truth. Some doors, when opened, cannot be closed again. And as another crash echoed from the darkness outside, she realized they had no choice but to confront what they had awakened. The power flickered and died, plunging them into darkness. Panic clawed at her throat as the laughter grew louder, reverberating off the walls, an echo of ancient malice. Jenna's mind raced. What had they unleashed? A screech pierced the silence, reverberating through the night like banshees crying. They were not alone anymore. Mom, what do we do? Kyle's voice trembled, small against the encroaching terror. And in that moment, the ominous veil of night fell further, thickening around them, and she knew there was only one way to find out what awaited them. With dread curling in her stomach, she grasped the doorknob one last time, preparing to face whatever lurked outside. The darkness whispered promises, and Jenna was caught in its allure. Would they emerge unscathed, or would the whispers claim them as their own? The answers whispered down the unyielding path ahead. Jenna's fingers tightened around the doorknob as dread spilled into her veins. She felt alive and yet utterly paralyzed, her heart hammering with the rhythm of fear. The laughter grew, deepening into a cacophony that filled the air with chill, each peal dripping malice. Mom, Kyle whispered again, and his voice was a lifeline, an echo of innocence amidst chaos. She turned, searching his face for courage. But the shadows seemed to leer from the corners of the room, waiting, hungry. Stay behind me, she said, forcing the words through clenched teeth. With a resolve she barely felt, she pushed the door open, each creak sounding like a funeral dirge. Cold, wet air rushed in, wrapping around them like icy fingers. The storm was still howling outside, but now it felt as though the screaming wind was mocking them. Jenna squinted into the darkness, struggling to see past the threshold where the yard limbed away into unknowing. The figure was gone, disappeared as if it had never been there, leaving a weighty silence in its wake. But still, The whispers curled around her, slithering beneath her skin. You shouldn't have come here. You must pay. The things they said felt like tendrils reaching out to embrace her thoughts. Look, Kyle gasped, pointing into the night. Just beyond the porch light, pale shapes flickered in and out of view, ghostly outlines that shimmered like mist under the stormy sky. Eyes glinted back at them, hollow, black, and unfeeling. Jenna's breath quickened, fear clawing at her throat. Get back inside. She pulled Kyle back, slamming the door shut, her heart racing as it echoed through the stillness of their home. As she turned, the air shifted. The shadows in the room grew darker, more defined. The furniture loomed ominously around them, and every creak of the house felt like a sigh of resignation. Then, like an electric shock, the lights flickered back to life, revealing the suffocating form of a figure in the corner, a tall silhouette with elongated fingers that seemed to stretch toward them. Mom. Kyle backed up, eyes wide, stuck between fight and flight. Stay close, she urged, her pulse roaring in her ears. She could feel it now, a heavy presence pressing against her, as if the room itself conspired to keep them trapped. The figure shifted, limbs bending unnaturally, and Jenna's blood turned to ice. Join us, it breathed, voice a low timbre that scrabbled against her mind. Jenna felt her resolve shatter, the very walls seeming to close in on her sanity. It wasn't just the whispers. Something was stirring beneath their feet, old and sinister, demanding acknowledgement. Mom, the drawings, Kyle murmured, dragging her back to the present. They're all wrong. They're alive. No, she shouted, desperation bursting forth. We're not doing this. You hear me? But inside, she felt the truth thrumming. Kyle's sketches were telling a story she couldn't unravel, one they were dangerously entangled in. Why did you have to come back? Why did you awaken them? The figure hissed, as the shadows writhed around Jenna and Kyle. They were not merely shapes. Every fleeting glimpse revealed lost souls, twisted faces formed by wrath and sorrow. We're leaving, Jenna declared, adrenaline giving her legs strength. She spotted the back door, half hoping, half fearing it would lead them to escape. But as she started to pull Kyle away, the whispers transformed, rising into a chilling crescendo. You're one of us now, Kyle screamed, and the very ground beneath them trembled. The house shook, every picture frame rattling ominously. Jenna felt the pull of the abyss straining against her sanity. Mom, I can't breathe, Kyle gasped, fighting against the invisible hold suffocating him. No longer in control, Jenna clawed desperately at her son's hand. They had awakened something they could not fight alone. In that moment, Jenna felt a flicker of doubt, a dark certainty that this was not just about escape. It never was. It was a reckoning, a haunting, and perhaps worse, she was quietly beginning to understand her own connection to the darkness that surrounded them. What will you do? A whisper came, softer now, like a warm caress that chilled her to her core. Jenna looked deep into Kyle's terrified eyes, seeing a mixture of resolve and fear. We have to fight, she whispered back, steeling herself for whatever came next. But as she stepped toward the door, a chill swept through the house, wrapping around them like barbed wire. And from the darkness, an ominous voice echoed, to fight is to know, and to know is to become. With the weight of dread pressing down on them, Jenna realized they were in the eye of the storm. Something remained just outside the reach of their sanity, and it was waiting for them to take the next step. What truth awaited them, and what revelations would emerge when the shadows finally spoke? Jenna's heart pounded against her chest, every beat a drum of foreboding. The air was heavy, saturated with whispers and pregnant with dread. She glanced again at Kyle, his little face pale and wide-eyed. Was it terror or something else she glimpsed there? Interest? Curiosity? Their fingers entwined tightly, a fragile tether preventing her from spiraling into despair. Hold on to me, she said with a shaky breath. Determination surged through her. They couldn't stay here any longer, suffocating in the shadow's grip. With slow, deliberate steps, she moved toward the back door, every creak and moan of the house reminding her they were not alone. The whispers now seemed to be rising in pitch, like a choir of lost souls. Jenna, a disembodied voice crooned, thick with malice. You can't leave, don't listen to them, she hissed, feeling Kyle's grip tighten. The cold seeped deeper into her bones as she reached the door, heart racing in time with the whispers, which had now transformed into a maddening chant, a rhythm designed to unhinge her. The storm outside roared, fierce winds battering against the house. It felt alive, the very walls pulsing with a sinister energy, as if they were watching, waiting. Jenna's breath came quick and fast. She could feel Kyle's quickening heartbeat mirrored in her own. She flung the door open, the brisk gust blowing against her like a warning. Outside, the yard resembled a twisted nightmare, shadows moving with purpose across the overgrown grass. For a moment, the world was nothing but darkness and the shriek of wind, a swirling vortex of fear. "Mom, look!" Kyle's voice broke through the cacophony, trembling yet urgent. He pointed into the depths of the yard, where something glinted like molten silver against the dark earth. "What is it?" she asked, torn between fear and curiosity, the whispering winds almost distracting her. "There," Kyle insisted. The shapes flickered with movement, gaining definition, revealing macabre figures emerging from the shadows. Hunched over, they crept closer with unnerving grace, faces shrouded in mist. Jenna's breath caught as the chilling realization dawned these were not mere shadows. They were remnants, fragments of what the house had consumed over the years held in limbo, wanting release. "Come inside," she shouted, yanking Kyle back as he stared, enthralled by the emerging figures, the darkness calling to him like a siren. There was an invitation in their movement, something that promised escape from the pain of the living. "Mom, they want us to join them," Kyle said in awed disbelief. Horror flooded through Jenna, a sickness creeping into her veins. They were beckoning, drawing them closer, whispering sweet nothings masked in venom. "Kyle, no," she cried, but it felt futile as shadows danced, twirling with an otherworldly rhythm. Terror jolted through her system. She grabbed Kyle's arm and propelled him back into the house, slamming the door against the howling winds. The darkness outside pressed against the wooden barrier, furious and insistent. "What do we do?" Kyle shrieked, panic sparkling in his eyes, darting around the gloomy room as shadows stretched ominously along the walls. "They'll come inside. They want to let us go." "Then we must prepare," Jenna replied, her voice sharper than she intended. Underlying her fear was a shard of iron will. Their only chance was to face what loomed ahead, whatever the truth was. They would wrest it from the shadows to eye in the oppressive silence. Jenna's mind raced. The drawings Kyle's sketches filled with tormented figures and hidden secrets. What had he been channeling? What had she led him into? "Mom," the basement, Kyle whispered, horror painting his features. "That's where they came from." "No," she gasped, suddenly remembering the rancid smell she had brushed off earlier, the strange murmurs of old wood. "Yes," he insisted passionately, "we have to know, it has to stop." They stood on the precipice, caught between desperation and madness. The walls shivered around them as the whispers became howls, pulling at their resolve. "Let it guide you," came the disembodied voice once more, soothing like poison. Jenna spun, heart racing. "No, we are not like them." But doubt clawed at her, a creeping sense of familiarity woven into the malevolence surrounding them. She felt it before, a long-buried connection stirring beneath the surface. Resolute, Jenna turned to Kyle. "We need to go into the basement. We must face this together. Whatever we find, we will confront it." With a final glance toward the door, her heart churning with dread, she made her way towards the basement, each step echoing through the ominous silence, the shadows swirling around them, whispering secrets too dark for the light. What awaited them beneath hallowed ground, hidden in darkness, and what gruesome truths would the past reveal? Jenna held her breath as she approached the basement door, its surface splintered and grimy, like the very essence of what lay beyond. The chill seeped into her bones, and she struggled to find comfort in the warmth of Kyle's small hand. But they had to face this, no matter how dreadful it felt. Squaring her shoulders, Jenna wrapped her fingers around the cold metal knob and twisted. The door creaked open with agonizing slowness. Stale air rushed up from the depths like a ghost exhaling its last breath, thick and heavy with despair, nearly tangible in its rancid aroma. She stepped inside, dragging Kyle along, letting him clutch her waist. The basement yawned before them, dark and suffocating. A single light bulb dangled from the ceiling, flickering sporadically, casting shadows that darted against the walls like frightened animals. The air was slick with moisture and carried the faint smell of decay. Jenna's heart contorted uneasily in her chest. "Mom, I don't like this," Kyle whispered, clinging tighter to her. His voice trembled, and a tremor ran through him as he scanned the room, eyes wide and unblinking at the corners where darkness pooled. "I know, baby. We'll be okay," she croaked, though her stomach knotted at the sight of the crumbling stairs leading deeper into the abyss. Reluctantly, she took a step down, and Kyle followed. Each footfall echoed against the concrete, taunting them with an unsettling reminder of their isolation at the bottom. The basement opened into a larger chamber. Jenna's eyes adjusted, and she gasped. Scattered across the grimy floor were remnants of bygone eras, faded photographs, broken toys, and tall, brittle stacks of newspapers yellowed with age. It was a graveyard of forgotten lives, tortured echoes of what this house had devoured whole. "Look at this." Kyle pointed shakily at a rusted iron latch fixed to the wall, barely visible under an old coat of dust. It shimmered like silver in the flickering light, beckoning them forward. Jenna eyed it warily. This is where they came from," Kyle said, his voice low, almost reverent. "It's like they were trapped here." "Maybe we're safe if we don't touch anything," Jenna murmured. But even as she spoke, she felt drawn to the latch with an intensity she couldn't understand. She stepped closer, fear battling with a strange compulsion to unravel the mystery. "Don't open it," Kyle cried, wrenching at her arm. "Mom, please." But the latch seemed to resonate with Jenna's heartbeat, thrumming in tune with some dark intention. She swallowed hard, her throat tight, and reached out. A blinding flash of light erupted from the latch as soon as her fingers met the cold metal. An inhuman wail pierced the air, reverberating through the basement like a banshee-esque cry. Shadows twisted and writhed in concert, rising like smoke before swarming into a shape that sent chills racing down her spine. An unholy figure, its features barely discernible, yet brimming with spite and malice. Jenna stumbled backward, eyes locked on the apparition that tumbled forth from the latch, raging against its dormant prison. She felt Kyle's small frame trembling beside her, terror mirrored in his gaze. "What have you done?" it growled, voice like gravel scraping against steel. The shadows surged around them, spilling from every corner, greedily reaching out, searching for warmth, for life. Jenna's throat constricted as she realized this was only the beginning. They had awakened something ancient, something hungry. "Run!" she yelled, seizing Kyle's hand and sprinting toward the stairs, heart hammering. But as they ascended, the laughter of hollow voices filled the air, laughter that chilled her to the bone, promising they were trapped, ensnared in a web of fate she couldn't yet comprehend. "What do we do, Mom?" Kyle shouted, eyes wide with panic and desperation as the shadows clawed at their backs. "I don't know," she gasped, the door to the basement looming ahead like a final threshold to freedom. They reached it just as the darkness surged. It pressed in relentlessly, eager to claim them. With a primal scream, Jenna flung the door open, but the world beyond was not what she had expected. Somewhere beneath the frantic howling of the winds, something echoed, a voice, soft yet terrifying, calling to them in the night. "Come back, you belong to me." As they teetered on the edge of the doorway, Jenna felt the darkness creeping around their ankles. The chilling realization settled in. Perhaps escape wasn't an option after all. What horrors awaited them once they ventured through the threshold into the world outside? Would the darkness follow, or would they find themselves truly free? The wind howled like a child crying in the dark, whipping around Jenna and Kyle as they hesitated at the doorframe. The familiar yard now seemed unrecognizable, the trees bending ominously, and the porch swinging in eerie rhythm, like a beckoning arm from the beyond. Trouble was about to descend upon them if they lingered. "Mom, can we go?" Kyle's voice cut through the howling, a whisper punctuated by fear. Tightening her grip on his hand, Jenna pulled him through the doorway, though dread hung heavy in the air, just like the gathering storm clouds. With each step they took into their once familiar world, shadows danced at the fringes of their vision. The whispers, those dreadful whispers, still echoed in her ears. "You belong to me," it taunted, a chilling reminder that the night was not done with them just yet. "What was that?" Kyle murmured, looking back over his shoulder. Jenna shook her head, panic surging through her. She forced herself to focus. "It's just the wind," she lied, too afraid to weave the truth into a fabric of fear they couldn't escape from. They moved further away from the house, toward the street that felt unnaturally still, sucked dry of life. Each crunch of gravel beneath their feet echoed too loudly in the dreadful silence as they neared the street. Something caught Jenna's eye, the faint outline of a figure standing beneath the solitary streetlight. A chilling figure, tall and gaunt with a wide-brimmed hat casting a shadow over its face. It didn't move, but the air around it seemed thick and sultry, almost alive. Jenna's gut twisted, her heart racing as she halted. "Kyle, stay close." But Kyle was already edging toward the figure, his curiosity pitted against fear. "What is that?" he asked, voice shaky, but determination clear in his demeanor. "Don't go," Jenna yelled, lunging forward as the figure suddenly shifted, the earth seeming to thrum. It gestured towards the shadows that swelled from the house, tendrils of black spirit creeping like fog along the ground. "Run." Jenna seized Kyle and sprinted down the road, leaving behind the lurking horror settling in the periphery. Exhaustion clawed at her muscles, couldn't stop, couldn't breathe, just run. Behind them, the laughter crescendoed, filling the night with a terrible glee that made her blood run cold. It promised pursuit, the shadows looming and gathering. Just as they reached the curve of the street, she glanced back and saw the figure had vanished, but the shadows lingered, moving like a tide chasing after them. "We have to find a place to hide," Jenna blurted, scanning the area. Ahead, the old playground, its swings creaking with the wind, loomed like a sanctuary. It was a refuge wrapped in memories of happier times, now twisted with fear. "Mom, it's not safe," Kyle whispered, glancing back. The shadows slithered, stretching outward, eager to spill into the light. "Just follow me," she insisted, and dashed toward the jungle of rusted metal and rotting wood. They reached the playhouse, a tattered fortress that now seemed like their best chance at survival. Kicking open the door, they ducked inside, hoping to find solace. Inside, stale air kissed her skin, and memories of laughter haunted them as it filled the dark corners with whispers. Jenna pulled the door shut, the wood splintering under the pressure. Rapidly, she and Kyle squeezed in, but the darkness pressed against them, an entity that slithered eagerly into the playhouse. "What if it finds us?" Kyle whimpered, burying his face into her side. "We just need to stay quiet," Jenna murmured, hoping it was true. As they nestled against the wall, the laughter from before echoed louder outside, clearer, more manic. The door rattled violently, shadows of hands clawing, trying to force it open. "Mom, it's coming," Kyle screamed, clutching her tightly, eyes wide with terror. In that moment, Jenna realized the playhouse wouldn't hold. The shadows thrived on fear, and she had awakened an ancient hunger. But what was this entity? And what did it truly want from them? The shadows surged. The door gave way with a splintering crack. Jenna's heart raced as the darkness swept in like a tidal wave, engulfing everything. What they would face now would decide their fate. Desperately, she whispered to Kyle, "We have to be brave, we'll figure this out." Outside, the voice returned, a sinister chant wrapping around them. "Come back, you belong to me." As the darkness closed in, Jenna had but one last thought. What had they really awakened? What awaited them in the suffocating shadows? Darkness enveloped them, alive with a dreadful energy. Jenna squeezed Kyle's hand tighter as she felt the shadows seeping further into the playhouse, curling around them like cold smoke. She could barely breathe under the weight of fear and despair. The laughter from outside morphed into something menacing, a chorus of haunting voices echoing with malicious delight. "Stay very still," Jenna whispered, her voice trembling. The darkness was thick, suffocating, and the air felt charged with an ominous electric hum. She strained to hear any movement outside, heart thumping loud enough to drown out the whispers. "Mom," Kyle's voice quivered, breaking the silence. "Can we please go home?" Jenna shut her eyes, fighting back tears. Home felt a lifetime away. She knew that whatever hunted them had roots deep in that house, stirring from centuries of malevolence. "We'll find a way out, I promise," she murmured, but the words fell heavy, burdened by uncertainty. Suddenly, the laughter grew softer, replaced by a low whispering. It slithered through the crevices of the wood, wrapping around them like a dissonant lullaby. Jenna glanced at Kyle. His eyes were wide with terror, reflecting the faint glint of moonlight seeping in through cracks in the walls. The door creaked ominously, trembling as if a force pushed against it from the outside. Gripped with dread, Jenna pressed her back against the wall, hoping to merge with the shadows and become invisible. The laughter returned, warping and twisting through the air. Come out. Come out. We just want to play. The voice was silky smooth, yet laced with hunger. Jenna's heart raced faster. It sounded almost childlike, a predator cloaked in innocence. The shadows danced closer, shifting turbulently as if alive, twisting into grotesque shapes. Mom, Kyle squeaked, his small body shaking against hers. I want to go. Please. Before Jenna could respond, the door swung open with a snap, revealing a black expanse outside. But it was more than darkness, it was a swirling void, pulling at them, hungry for warmth, for life. The figure from the street hovered just beyond the threshold, its outline barely discernible. The brim of the hat cast a shadow that seemed to consume the light. Don't move, Jenna hissed. Instinctively, they retreated further into the corner, yet inexplicably, the figure beckoned with a skeletal hand, fingers long and twisted. Come to me. You belong to me, it crooned, voice dripping with malice. In that moment, Jenna felt the breath leave her lungs. It was not a request but a demand, filled with an ancient hunger that clawed at her very soul. Mom, I'm scared. Kyle cried, tears spilling down his cheeks. The figure took one step forward, shadows churning at its feet. Jenna realized the tendrils grasping at her were not just shadows, they were her fears manifesting, feeding the darkness, intensifying the threat. No, Jenna shouted, the primal instinct to protect surging through her. She clawed her way towards the door, feeling the push of the darkness against her, her heart pounding against her ribcage like a staccato drumbeat. We have to get out, she screamed, yanking Kyle along, trying to brave the unfurling terror. As they stumbled forward, shadows brushed past them like icy fingers, trying to pull them back. Jenna felt something lash out, a strike of darkness that nearly knocked her off her feet. Run, Kyle, run. Together, they shot from the doorway, plunging into the night, the playground shifting into a chaotic blur of motion. The swings creaked viciously as the wind whipped around them, but Jenna never looked back. They tore down the street, racing from the clutches of the shadows behind them. But the laughter followed, taunting. You can't escape me, it whispered, curling in the air and echoing in her mind. Jenna reached the corner of the street, breathless, adrenaline flooding her veins when she saw an old, rusted sign swaying gently in the wind. Cemetery, it read in peeling letters, a chilling sight lying just beyond the shadowed trees. Mom, where do we go? Kyle panted, eyes darting in all directions. Before Jenna could answer, the darkness surged behind them, a living wave rushing forth. The cemetery loomed ahead like an open mouth, daring them to enter. With nowhere else to run, Jenna clenched her fists, steeling herself against the terror. We have to go in there, she said, fear echoing in her chest. Kyle's face crumpled in fear, yet they both knew they had no choice. Together, they stepped toward the gates, the shadows just behind them, the laughter intensifying. What awaited them among the graves? Would the horrors of the night end here, or was this only the beginning? The air thickened as Jenna and Kyle crossed the threshold into the cemetery. Moonlight poured through the skeletal branches overhead, illuminating a path lined with crumbling headstones. Each grave whispered the echoes of the past, tales of lives long gone, but not forgotten. Let us stick together, Jenna urged, casting nervous glances at the shadowy figures that seemed to loom behind every stone. The laughter had quieted, but a sinister silence draped over the ground like a heavy fog, pressing down on them. A sudden shift in the breeze sent chills racing down Jenna's spine. She could feel eyes watching from the darkness, lurking behind the stones. No one is here. It's just us, she reassured herself, yet doubt gnawed at her resolve. Mom, I don't like this place. Kyle clutched her hand tighter. His small body trembled, squeezed against her like a lifeline. Me neither, but we need to keep moving, Jenna whispered, pulling him along. They wandered deeper, the headstones growing taller and more twisted, some leaning precariously as if trying to escape the ground that held them. She paused for a moment, the names etched in stone blurring together in her eyes. There was something unsettling about this graveyard, something almost alive. A sudden thud echoed through the silence, the sound reverberating like a heartbeat in the stillness. Jenna spun around, adrenaline spiking, her breath caught in her throat. "Did you hear that?" Kyle's eyes were wide as saucers. "Shoo!" Jenna hissed, her heart racing. She strained to listen, hoping against hope it was merely the wind. But then came another noise, softer this time, a whisper. "Come play with us." Jenna's stomach dropped as dread filled her chest. The whispers were everywhere, swirling around them like a tempest of despair. "Mom, we should go back." Kyle stressed, pulling away instinctively. "No," Jenna snapped, forcing herself to stay calm. "We can't go back. We'll find some shelter. Just hold on, please." With Kyle reluctantly trailing behind, Jenna moved through the graveyard like a ghost, desperate to reclaim their freedom. Shadows flickered in her peripheral vision, darting out of sight as quickly as they appeared. "Mom, over there." Kyle's voice shattered the darkness, pointing toward an old mausoleum ahead. It stood ominously, its entrance yawning like the mouth of a great beast, beckoning them. Feeling the shadows press in close, Jenna steered them toward it. "We'll hide there until morning," she whispered, almost convincing herself that it was the right choice. As they approached, the door creaked open, revealing an interior shrouded in darkness more profound than the night outside. The air was stale, heavy with the absence of life, and the musty scent clawed at Jenna's senses. "Mom, I don't want to go in," Kyle bleated, but the sounds behind them, the sinister laughter, intensified, urging them forward. "We have to." With her heart pounding louder than before, Jenna pulled Kyle through the threshold, feeling the temperature drop sharply. Inside, the shadows danced on the walls, revealing faint outlines of coffins and cobwebs that draped like ghostly veils. The hairs on the back of Jenna's neck stood on end, and panic twisted in her gut as a heavy silence settled over them. "Jenna," a voice echoed from the dark, haunting and familiar. It wasn't a whisper, it was a memory, a name. Jenna, her breath caught. It was her mother's voice. "But that was impossible, Mom." Kyle cried, hearing it too. "Stay close," she ordered as a chill coursed through the air, the darkness seeming to thicken, absorbing their will. All at once, the walls of the mausoleum trembled, sending a shiver through Jenna's bones. "Come to me," the voice sang again, this time closer, laced with a sorrowful longing that morphed into a sinister chant. "Mom, what is happening?" Kyle's voice cracked. Just hold on," Jenna whispered, heart racing in sync with the encroaching shadows. She strained to shield Kyle as the whispers crescendoed, swirling around them, tantalizing and terrifying. They pressed against her, urging her to step deeper into the choking void. Jenna felt the pull, a dark desire wrapping around her mind. Was she losing herself? With one final glance back, Jenna and Kyle stepped further into the abyss, driven by desperation, trailing into the darkness, called by their own haunted fates. Then came the loud crash. Something had broken outside. What had they awakened in this graveyard of shadows? Would they confront whatever awaited them, or would they be consumed by the very terror they sought to escape? The crash echoed like thunder, hammering against the stone walls of the mausoleum. Jenna's heart raced as the sound of splintering wood faded, replaced by an eerie silence that stretched like a taut wire. Shadows flickered, and Jenna instinctively pulled Kyle closer. "What was that?" Kyle whimpered, his voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know," Jenna lied, veiling her uncertainty. Panic clawed at her throat, but she needed to stay strong. Maybe it's just the wind, but deep within, she knew this was nothing natural. The heavy air felt thicker, more alive. It seemed to trickle into her lungs, wrapping her in a grip of dread. A low growl emerged from the depths of the mausoleum, and Jenna's breath quickened. "We should find a way out," she stammered, but even as she spoke, an oppressive force pressed down on them, compelling her to stay put. Mom, Kyle's small hand trembled in hers. "I want to go home." "I know, buddy," she murmured, but her own voice felt foreign in the dim light. A flicker of movement drew her eye to the far corner of the mausoleum. Hovering just outside the edge of the moonlit area, a haze of gray shifted, taking shapes that seemed to morph in the shadows. Jenna squinted, heart pounding as she tried to make sense of it. "Jenna, come play with us," the ethereal voices echoed again, softer now, more enticing. It was a siren call that sent a wave of nausea rolling through her stomach. Jenna's eyes darted around, searching for a way to escape. She pulled Kyle towards one of the cracked windows, a faint glimmer of moonlight seeping through. "We can climb out," but before they could move, the darkness shifted and coiled like a snake. A figure emerged, its outline fuzzy but growing solid. The face was obscured, crowned with wisps resembling fog, yet the chilling familiarity sent tremors of recognition through Jenna. "Mom," she breathed, and her heart sank. "Jenna, I've waited for so long." The voice was sweet, full of warmth and sorrow, just like she remembered. But beneath it lurked something darker, twisting the love into something threatening. "No." Jenna shook her head, stepping backward. "You're not her. You're not real." The apparition chuckled, a sound that resonated through the mausoleum like broken glass. "Come to me, my child. Let us be a family again." Kyle's grip tightened. He pulled away and pointed, eyes wide. "Mom, look." Jenna turned, following his gaze. From the shadows at the entrance, more figures stepped forward, their faces obscured yet eyes glowing with a malevolent hunger. The whispers had multiplied, surrounding them like a storm. "Join us, Jenna. Join us." In that moment, the walls pulsed with energy, a quickening heartbeat merging with their own. Jenna felt the pull again, stronger now, a tether to the figures that lingered, waiting. The promise of solace twisted her thoughts. "Mom, please, let us go," Kyle cried, dragging at her hand, his own fear igniting hers. The wall shook violently, breaking Jenna from the spell. They were trapped, the whispers clawing at her sanity, luring her into the darkness. She felt every heartbeat, every moment stretching into eternity. In a flash of courage, she turned to Kyle, eyes fierce. "We need to run now." Gripping his hand tightly, Jenna flung herself towards the only exit. But just as they sprinted, the mausoleum door slammed shut behind them with a resounding thud, sealing their fate. Jenna, the figure, reached out, shadows spilling from its fingertips. "You can never leave." Fear gripped Jenna's chest like a vice. What had they awakened? As the figures advanced, Jenna and Kyle were forced back, inching toward the mounting dread. The whispers crescendoed, a cacophony of calls. And just as darkness enveloped them, a flash of light illuminated the space. "Mom, look out." A desperate scream escaped Kyle's lips, freezing Jenna in place as she turned back toward the ominous light. What awaited them in the blinding brilliance? Would they find their escape, or was it merely another trap laid by the shadows that hunted them now? The light spilled into the mausoleum, radiant and blinding. Jenna squinted against its brilliance, heart racing as she felt the shadows flinch and recoil from the sudden illumination. It pierced the oppressive darkness, illuminating the twisted faces around her, if only for a fleeting moment. "Mom," Kyle called, his voice cutting through the chaos. She could see him wide-eyed and fearful standing at the edge of the light, where the shadows bucked and groaned. "We have to go?" Panic surged in Jenna. She wasn't sure how long the light would hold. With a fierce grip, she tugged Kyle toward her, backing away from the dark figures who closed in, their mouths curling into sinister grins. "Stay close, Kyle," she urged, the tremor in her voice barely masked by her determination. The warmth of the light felt like their only hope, but the shadows whispered assurances, promising things she didn't want to hear. "Don't listen to them," she shouted desperately, trying to drown out the voices that echoed her own fears. Suddenly, the shadows surged, merging into forms that reached for them. "You belong with us," they hissed, fingers stretched grotesquely, as if the air itself conspired against Jenna and Kyle. But Jenna felt a spark igniting deep within her, not just fear, but a surge of strength. "No," she shouted, the word resonating with a power she didn't know she possessed. "We want to be yours." With her heart roaring like a drum, Jenna surged into the light, pulling Kyle along. The energy enveloped them like a protective bubble, pushing back against the malevolence that sought to claim them. "Run," she yelled, desperation fueling her feet as they sprinted toward the threshold of the mausoleum's entrance, the light guiding their path. They dove through the opening. Jenna felt the darkness snap at their heels. The whispers surged to a deafening crescendo, desperate and furious. But as they burst into the open air, the wind howled with renewed vigor, breaking the hold the shadows had on them. They stumbled onto the damp earth, ragged breaths escaping their lips. The cemetery was still. The air was heavy with the scent of rain and earth, but the shadows lingered at the edges, thwarted, but not gone. Jenna turned back, her heart thundering with a cocktail of relief and dread. "We have to keep moving," she urged, trying to drown out the echoes of the malignant laughter. "Where do we go?" Kyle asked, eyes brimming with tears as he scanned the graveyard. The familiar fear tugged at him, dark tendrils of despair creeping back. "The woods," Jenna replied, pointing toward the thick trees beyond the cemetery. "We can lose them there." She took his hand, squeezing tight, determination firing through her veins. They ran into the woods, leaves crunching beneath their feet as the shadows resided reluctantly beyond the tree line. With each step, it felt as though they were leaving something behind, the whispers fading to mewling cries. Jenna didn't dare look back, fear and hope whirling like a tempest around her. "We're almost clear," she reassured Kyle, her breath ragged. "Just keep moving." Suddenly, a crash echoed between the trees, and a dark shape emerged from the underbrush, a tall figure cloaked in malice. "You'll never escape," it warned, voice laden with disdain. The shadows that clung to it swirled and danced, beckoning like an ocean tide. Jenna's heart sank as terror surged. But then a glimmer of steel caught her eye, a hunting knife, half buried in the dirt near a gnarled tree root. In an instant, she dove for it, gripping it tight as she turned to face the looming figure. "Get back!" she screamed, brandishing the knife like a talisman against the encroaching darkness. "If you come any closer, I'll make you wish you hadn't." The figure hesitated, the shadows swirling around it, growing denser as it shrank away from the gleaming blade. "You understand nothing," it hissed. "You belong to us. The past cannot be escaped." Jenna's heart pounded harder at its words. The past? Was it true? They had awakened something. She felt it coil in her veins, memories lost to the whispers. "But not now. Not today. I might have awakened you," she declared defiantly, "but I refuse to be a part of you." With resolution, Jenna stepped forward, and the knife gleamed as she pierced the shadows driving toward them. In that moment, fear cracked open, and with it, a surge of raw power erupted. An ethereal light exploded forth, pouring into the night, flooding with energy that ripped through the sinewy shadows. The figure screeched, disintegrating under the force of the light. The shadows shrieked, their whispers evolving into cries of anguish as they were erased, dissolving into the air like smoke. Bright light pulsed and billowed, consuming the darkness that threatened to swallow them whole. Jenna felt the weight lift, a broken chain shattering. As she smote the shadows, she thrived on the sharpness of her fear, transformed into defiance. "Mom, it's working." Kyle's voice rose in exultation as they stepped backward, out from the maelstrom of terror. Jenna looked down at him, her heart swelling with love and pride. "We did it, Kyle." But even as she spoke, doubt flickered. The ground rumbled beneath them, shadows swirling in retaliation, but the light surged stronger. With fierce will, Jenna and Kyle held their ground, the shadows shattering against their resolve. "Stay with me," Jenna shouted, the words fueled by raw determination. She pressed forward, the warmth of the light growing until the silhouettes faded, tumbling into nothingness, and then silence fell. The air was still, wrapping around them in a blanket of calm. Jenna exhaled, relief washing over her like a tide, pouring into her heart as she turned, grasping Kyle in a fierce embrace. "We're free," she whispered, tears streaming down her cheeks. Kyle beamed up at her, his face alight with wonder, and though the cemetery loomed behind them, the mist receded. The threat was gone, perhaps for good. The laughter faded, a remnant echoing in the tranquil night. But deep within, Jenna felt traces of their experience, a connection to the darkness that now lay dormant. It wouldn't be easily forgotten. The shadows lingered on the edges of her mind, but she would grow stronger. "Together, let us go home," she said, feeling a sense of liberation awaken within her and newfound strength born from the fight they had endured. Hand in hand, Jenna and Kyle stepped into the dawn, leaving the shadows behind to seek the light of a new day. The woods welcomed them as they ventured forth. Jenna held Kyle close, a protective barrier against the past that sang within her, but she felt hope blooming alongside it. the light promising a future unstained by the curse of what they had unearthed. As they stepped into the dawn, they both knew. The shadows may come again, but she would be ready. Together, the memories would soften into echoes that resided in the corners of their hearts, no longer wanting, never haunting. Just a part of their history. But for now, they were free. As they walked, Jenna whispered to the breeze, a silent vow that they would face whatever came next. Because I choose light over darkness. Always. And in that moment, the first rays of dawn broke through the trees. Stay vigilant, for shadows never fully vanish. If you enjoyed this spine-chilling story, don't wait even one more second. Subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive tales that will keep you on the edge. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm. It genuinely makes a difference in spreading the story. Flood the comments with your reactions and theories about the journey we just finished together. We want to hear from you. And best of all, instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who need to experience this superb conclusion. You need to support the channel by taking these actions. This is the moment for true fans to shine.